Chris Voss gave me a huge 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon, and I'm grateful to him for bringing you today's video. Well, the bans are active. This is the first game in which I have begun to record and the bans are actually active, but we've got Fast Mana in the opening hand. Nothing else really, although Zozu can hopefully refill our hand once our commander's in play, so obviously going to try this one out. And we do draw on our opening turn, got a fuse card in Toil and Trouble. Alright, the other Valgavoth player just decided to pass the turn and discarded a land to hand size, weirdly. Yeah, no idea what's going on there. A Decree of Pain is what we draw into for the turn, so let's see, we'll just try out our commander here, I think. And if we lose both our commander and the Sol Ring, then we're pretty screwed. But I think we're pretty safe with the Emrakul player. That player decides to scoop. I mean, we've got at least one Valgavoth player left at the table here. Plague Mere for the Emrakul player. Yep, there we go. And the Emrakul player decides to scoop. Yep, banning Fast Mana definitely makes the games better. Rakdos Signet for the other Rakdos player. We'll go for Zozu here because I want to start. We're not going to refill our hand with Valgavoth like we should have done. But yeah, I do want to show off how to play the commander at least. So play the Zozu, and that will punish anyone. As soon as they put a land into play, it will shock them. So we'll assume our opponent wants to get a land down next turn. And we can't put the plus counter or draw a card off Valgavoth during our turn, but might as well swing in for some commander damage anyway, because it's probably going to be relevant. A land, a tap land as well, played into... that's really unlucky of all the lands. You have two opponents scoop by turn 3, and this comes in tapped. Hope that's not relevant for our opponent. Plus counter onto Valgavoth. And we draw into another land, clearing that off the top is alright. And into play comes Zancha, and we get a Rakdos Signet of our own, so 6 cards in our opponent's hand, could deal a bunch of damage to him here. Just throw Swamp into play, which will deal 2 damage to us with the Zozu. And let's go for the fusion on this, so I'm assuming we target ourselves for the card draw. It doesn't actually tell us which one we're going for, but I'll assume it's left to right. So Trouble can be at our opponent. And yeah, we drew 2 cards there. Our opponent's down to 27. Drew into a Bloodseeker and another land. And we'll just swing in with everything, so getting our opponent to 9 commander damage. But luckily our opponent does have another land to make, so Zozu will make sure that we get a plus counter and draw a card. This would be happening, you assume, during every opponent's turn. So Sol Ring being able to get the Valgavoth down really early is excellent. Got a means of keeping our commander in play with a Feigned Death as well. And then it's Feed the Swarm onto our commander, so drawing into that just a little bit too late. Got greedy with the Fuse card apparently, but we've already got our opponent down to 16, and we haven't lost our Sol Ring yet, so that's fine. So our opponent's down to 12, managing to ramp with a Worn Power Stone though, 4 cards in hand. Okay, a Sulfuric Vortex as well, so 6 mana for our commander, and we hold up a black for Feigned Death, should be fine. So I'll just play a Mountain now. Take our 2 life, and we're ending the turn with 8 cards in hand, so just swing in with the Zozu, taking our opponent down to 10 by turn 5. Rakdos Signet is worse than a land, so we'll keep the land as opposed to the rock. Alright, lose 2 life, and this player draws a card just looking for an answer here. The problem is there's Ward, pay 2 life on this, so he's going to give us a card draw and a plus counter if he points anything over here, which makes Valgavoth quite difficult to deal with, especially now. Plays another land for a shock. Zozu doing a lot of work for us here. And then with that on the stack, he goes for drawing a card and having us lose 2 life again. And then once that resolves, we obviously get our plus counter and a card draw, restarting again, and have another means of protection. I think I've got about 3 of these in here. There is some sacrifice stuff, so we can sacrifice our commander, get a load of card draw or a load of treasure or fling it or something like that, bring it straight back into play with effects like this. Obviously it is effective when our opponents are going to use Terminates and stuff like that as well. Well, our opponent valiantly playing it out here. I do appreciate it after he was screwed over. So we'll swing in and knock him down to 1, meaning that we've probably got the game at this point. In fact, if I play Sulfuric Vortex, I don't see what he's going to do about it. So play a Swamp, we will take our 2 damage again. Then Sulfuric Vortex, 2 damage to each opponent during each of their own upkeeps. Might as well throw out the Solemn Simulacrum as well. If they play a creature, then they could lose 2 life, or 1 life, to the Bloodseeker as well. So there's Sulphuric Vortex on the stack, 2 damage to the opponent, can't gain any life. And that sees us win this one. Not a real game, obviously, we were drawing into Painful Quandary. Well, hopefully the video doesn't end there, but if it does, a big thank you for watching. I will try and get another gameplay in after this, but, well, like I said, if you don't see it, then this is the best of a bad bunch. Valgavoth versus Edgar Markov, Aragorn, and Grimgrin. We are on the play again. 2 lands, no basics this time, but yeah, Wheel of Fortune if we're desperate, so we'll try this. And there's a Feigned Death for us on turn 1, need to see some mana accelerants really. Aragorn throws out a turn 1 Delighted Halfling, and a Sulphuric Vortex for us, so very eager for another land next turn. Can always throw down the Orcish Bowmasters in the meantime at least. Dreadhorde Invasion for the zombie player has a Volrath Stronghold in the land zone here, so we'll be able to fish out creatures from the graveyard eventually. Then Arcane Signet for Aragorn. And see the first vampire, which I assume he's just drawn into because he didn't play it last turn. A Master of Dark Rites, which is going to have to get an Orcish Bowmasters pointed at it, I think. And we are in top deck mode until we get into another land. Very lucky to get into one there. So we could try our luck getting into a land next turn as well. So Sulphuric Vortex on turn 3, our commander next turn. But I think I'd rather try and guarantee the mana. So we'll go for Descent into Avernus. Dreadhorde Invasion, going to be very good once our commander hits play, because it has our opponent lose a life every turn. Demolition Field in play for the Dimir player as well. Nothing really of note to blow up though here, although he might use it to fix his own colours. Wouldn't be against my own jewels getting destroyed here. If we can get a big Orc army into play at some point as well, then that would be a good target to sacrifice into the Disciple of Bolas as well. Anyway, we see the first Lord from the zombie player, Lord of the Accursed, and it can give the zombies Menace. A Strip Mine for Aragorn in a 4-colour deck. Luckily not using it straight away. A Felwar Stone makes all the colours except green, I think. And then a Recce after that, which cares about legends coming into play. Or legends being cast specifically. Or a Signet, and haven't seen a land yet for the vampire player. So it might be a good idea that we decided to blow this thing up. Descent into Avernus, going to give treasure tokens. And be interesting to see if we get to draw into a land here. Problem is we've just given the blue player double blue, so hopefully isn't holding up counter magic, and we were going to draw into a land, so could have gone Sulphuric Vortex into the commander without giving our opponents mana. We'll see how relevant that becomes. No means of having our opponents lose life during their turn outside of the Sulphuric Vortex, so we're a turn or so behind where we'd like to be, but it might be that the Orcish Bowmasters can start doing something, and we'll at least draw a card to this like I pointed out. So pass the turn holding up the Feigned Death, so the enchantment triggers, we will get the plus counter and draw a card again. Draws us into Scytheclaw Raptor, that's good, so more means of dealing damage to our opponents. Another colourless land, our opponent being pretty unlucky with these utility lands here. You've got to be careful how many colourless lands you put into your multicoloured decks, even your monocoloured decks. Might just be unlucky though. I tend to run about 4 in my decks because, yeah, I'm worried about situations like this. I mean, he can at least make use of this and go and grab himself a basic. He's got the treasure available as well, of course. Making use of the treasure allows him into Grimgrin. Just wondering now if we want to get rid of anything in our hand. Maybe we could just go for Sulphuric Vortex into Wheel of Fortune next turn, because obviously Orcish Bowmasters with a wheel is 7 damage times the number of opponents you have, and can divide that wherever you like, so yeah, might be worth doing while we've got it online. Won't be able to trigger our commander during our turn though, like I've already pointed out. This is a pain land, I didn't notice that, so drawing a card, getting a plus counter there as well, and that is +3/+3 and Trample. 4 mana to play and equip. Looks as though we're going to see the Aragorn hit play. There it is, so being cast into the Recce allows a card draw, which means the Orcish Bowmasters will trigger. And are we going to see another legend? I bet we will, so I'm going to point it at the Recce just in case. Could obviously get rid of the vampire, but Don't think we need to worry about the token too much. Not until they get a load of lords down anyway. They were always going to lose life to a Verdant Catacombs anyway, which they have now just played, so be that a pain land or not, we were always going to draw here. We've maybe made our opponent think twice about casting another legendary spell though, which they might have wanted to do this turn. And making use of the treasure tokens, they have to remember that during our upkeep they are going to get more treasures, which they might be able to hold up an instant speed card with. Alright, well, there's another legend in Volo. So we are going to be able to get rid of the Recce here. They scry 2 to the blue from Aragorn. And then it's the +4/+4, forgot about that ability, so protecting their Recce with that. Alright, so seeing as how we gave the vampire player some mana, I don't think he should be scooping to getting his token blown up, which is what I was partly worried about, so get rid of the token while it's available. At least it's not swinging into us then. And our commander is now a 6/6, so the 5/6 Recce can't swing in towards us unless he wants to lose it, so goes into the right instead. Have to bear in mind as well, there are multiple means of having players be unable to gain life, which is a bit of a nombo with a card like Disciple of Bolas and Shadow Spear. If we can gain some life, great, but it's not the end of the world if we can't necessarily. We can still draw the cards with this, which is mainly why it's in here. Okay, so it's a Falconwrath Noble now, which puts a flyer in the way. But we can take the life gain away from here as well if we decide to go for the Sulphuric Vortex, which I'm leaning towards at the moment. So nothing for us to do. At the end of the turn we'll just go through to our turn and see what we can do. So descending to Avernus is going to trigger. We all get 4 treasure. So we're on 6 at the moment. We get into a land as well, so getting pretty lucky there. So we've got 11 mana. Playing and equipping this means that we could one-shot a player out of the game next turn potentially, assuming that we can keep this. So that means we've got Sulphuric Vortex, Tenza, Scytheclaw and holding up Feign Death. So yeah, getting that land made a difference here. Let's go for the Tenza. And so that makes this a 9/9. Let's get down the Sulphuric Vortex as well. In fact, I think I'll go for the Scytheclaw first, just in case someone decides to do something to Sulphuric Vortex. Should maybe have done that in case players want to interact with us in response to anything that we do here. So that land's alright. We'll throw the Vortex into play again. Priority being held up by the vampire player there, but decides to allow us to go through to combat, so it can be 9 damage straight down the middle. The Dimir player holding up interaction as well, potentially. In response, we see an instant speed card cast, Bitter Triumph, protecting his opponent from... not sure what the aim is there. He discarded Gravecrawler, which is a nice bit of tech with Bitter Triumph. So we'll lose 2 life to our commander, 4 life to the Scytheclaw Raptor. But doing this during our turn, so won't trigger the commander. We'll make him pay the life before we do anything else. But yeah, not sure about why he's trying to protect his opponent here. Should really use something like Bitter Triumph to protect himself. So we'll make use of our Feign Death in order to keep our commander in play. At least we're not taking 4 life to that, to our own Scytheclaw Raptor. It will unequip our Tenza and obviously remove it from combat though. It's noteworthy that we are against a couple of white players though, so cards like Feign Death might not be as good against them. Blue players can obviously have bounce as well. So that resolves when the Bitter Triumph lands here. We will get the commander back into play tapped with a plus counter on it. And we'll make sure to not return it to the command zone. Which means when it dies, the Falconwrath Noble is going to have a target player lose 1 life. No life gain on that, don't forget. And of course the Noble is pointed at us. Well, Grimgreen is just kind of sat there doing nothing now, so I'm hoping he doesn't time out on us after forcing us to use our interaction. Yeah, great. So now just decided to scoop because he didn't get the outcome he wanted. I mean, he had a load of mana to play with, so not sure what the thought process is there. Yet another one to add to the ban list. Minimises the number of cards that we're going to draw with Sulphuric Vortex and Valgavoth as well. So maybe we will have to go for Orcish Bowmasters and Wheel of Fortune. I'm assuming that we're not going to see a board wipe here. Alright, there's a cool new one. Withering Torment, never drawn into this one before since it was printed. Did make a video on this one and Black Enchantment removal in general, if you want to have a look at that Talking Head video. Trying to do more of those. I'm not sure if people are actually interested in them or not, but the views do okay. So now 5 cards in hand and we're giving multiple treasure tokens, so 4, 8 and 10, 11 mana available. Roaming Throne. Things are about to get interesting, so that triggers Volo for the first time and makes 2 Roaming Thrones. I think we need to deal with Aragorn as soon as we can. Creature type with the first one is human. Maybe it is just human tribal, although there's a halfling here. Alright, shows human twice, so looks like it is just human tribal, and he's playing around any kind of spot removal. Nature's Law after that is a green spell and triggers the Aragorn 3 times, so +4/+4 3 times. And scatters the +4/+4s around. I'm going to assume that this is all going to come in at us. Problem is now with the Wheel of Fortune we're going to end up refilling Aragorn's hand. So yeah, we'll see what happens here. If he ends up drawing some additional cards, then might make the wheel less painful for us. Although I've only just thought, if this is human tribal, he does have a bunch of humans in play, then Volo doesn't really make that much sense outside of the Roaming Throne and cards like that. I mean, yeah, maybe he has spread the tribes around and it's just unlucky that he's got into all the humans here. Anyway, there is a Hull Breach, so destroying both of our Descend into Avernus and the Tenza. So that Wheel of Fortune looking more and more inviting. 3 damage to us from Aragorn. 3 damage to us from Aragorn. And again, so 9 damage straight to us. Not taking damage from the Descend into Avernus at least. And then it is spreading the +4/+4 around, so yeah, we did say Roaming Throne was about to do some stuff. And then a Rest in Peace. I don't think we care about graveyards, but it does remove death triggers, this one, which also switches off the Falconwrath Noble as it happens. So everything gets exiled. I think we've got the Kaya's Ghost form, although that triggers on exile as well. I'm trying to think of things that might be relevant with a Rest in Peace in play. We can blow it up with Withering Torment anyway. So we've now got an 11-10, a 13-13, and a 9-10 swinging in towards us. Going to have to make some blocks here. Definitely block the commander. And the Scytheclaw Raptor is going to have to go down as well. We'll just take a hit for 9, because the Orcish Bowmasters is going to be relevant with the wheel, like I keep saying. Noteworthy some humans have been made here as well. And Sulfuric Vortex is going to trigger on our turn. This is the risky run with Group Slug. I tried to make it so that my opponents take more damage than we do, but there are some cards like this that affect everyone, including ourselves, and we saw the Zozu on the previous game. Anyway, see what we draw into here. That is a Wayfarer's Bauble. Bit too late for that at this point in the game, I think. Although it's only turn 5, it's been a fast one thanks to our descent into Avernus. Sorin only just getting into his 3rd land now in Path of Ancestry. Alright, he Feed the Swarm. So taking 3 damage to get rid of the Sulfuric Vortex. So it's just a case of hoping that we draw into something good with Wheel then, really, because our board has well and truly been decimated here. Makes sense to get rid of that, I suppose, because he does want a board wipe potentially, and then Falconwrath Noble's a lot better. We might even see a board wipe yet. So both of these coming in towards us. Another 3 damage. Yep, and there was the board wipe. I missed it. It went really quickly, but a Day of Judgment, that's might be us out of the game. Although only 1 card in this player's hand. Yes, we will return our commander to the command zone. Might be lucky in getting to a land so that we can replay our commander. But like I said, we've got no means of having our opponents lose life. So see what we draw into here. Alright, a Fell the Profane. Do we bolt ourselves? Yeah, I think we kind of have to. So we'll get down the commander again here and pass the turn. It might be that we can keep our commander in play for long enough to get a bunch of plus counters on it and then gain life with the Disciple of Bolash, you never know. Immediately forgot about the Rest in Peace, by the way. I was mentioning life gain from the Falconwrath Noble before, but switched off by 2 enchantments that. Which, thankfully, it probably all would have been pointed at us anyway, so Rest in Peace probably saved us there. Aragorn into play again as well. Captivating Vampire, one of my favourites from the tribe. Thankfully don't have a bunch of vampires in play though, and they will still have to pay our ward cost on this, because it does target. Alright, so see what we top deck into here. I'm not thinking we're going to be swinging in with our commander. It is just a land, so I think we just have to carry on with our mana, because we're just treading water at this point. Hold up the Withering Torment. We'd only have 4 mana after a wheel, and it refills this guy's hand, which I don't like, so play at Wayfarer's Bauble. We'll crack that and hold up the Withering Torment. Could be an idea to just blow this up straight away and make them use up all their mana again, but It might be that Captivating Vampire sees a couple of vampires be cast next turn and then can steal our commander. But we're not doing anything anyway, so yeah, I'll do this during the upkeep, just in case they've got some kind of interaction, they can use it during their turn. Might be that we have to use Fling on the Captivating Vampire as well to keep them from stealing our commander. So we'll hold up mana for as long as we can. Might be that we see a Spite Strip Mine in response to this, but yeah, let's see. Go down to 7 life as well. Alright, we do successfully blow up the commander. So that's one fewer attacks we need to worry about. Might have been that he could have played a green spell into it and swung in at us. Faramir, that would have been a token and scry 2, I think. But we're assuming that he's going to be targeting the vampire player and trying to team up to get rid of us. Oh, I missed before, Profane Tutor was suspended on the previous turn by the vampire player. And there's a green spell, Cabaretti Ancestry, or Ascendancy even. Both triggering at the beginning of the upkeep. It's noteworthy he's held up his Pain Land as well, so kind of unable to play that. And okay, decided to choose us to dissuade us from attacking in over there. He's assuming that we're not going to attack because we've got our only blocker in play here, which is probably a safe assumption. So with the Profane Tutor, he will get the tutor on the stack next turn. 3 cards in hand currently. Only 4 lands by turn 7 though. Welcoming Vampire gets another Vampire into play, so are we going to see another one? Because that does put Captivating Vampire in a rough spot for us. Alright, going through to combat, so I think it's safe to assume that they don't have another Vampire to play here. So in that case, at the end step, we will crack the Wayfarer's Bauble, which could be relevant, especially with that Strip Mine floating around. I think if we have to replay our commander, it's going to be the end of the game for us though. So are we at a point where we have to go for the Wheel of Fortune here? I think so. If we draw into Cabal Coffers, are we going to regret getting rid of that land? I don't think so. Yeah, I think it just has to be the wheel here. Not really sure what we're going to draw into, to be honest. But we're refilling every player's hand, which is always risky. And it's really bad luck if we don't draw into a land here. Alright, did get into some, so got Chaos Warp now, Bitter Triumph as well, so yeah, okay. Ascending to Avarice. If that's a tutor, then we don't have to take life to it. Still don't have a means of hurting our opponent during his turn though. Yeah, I think Thrill of Possibility discards Knight's Whisper, Bitter Triumph discards a Mountain. So that's 2 mana twice is 4, doesn't leave us with enough for the Insatiable Avarice to tutor. And there's nothing that we could grab with this for just 1 mana to play it out straight away, you know, because it'd cost us 5 mana to tutor and draw, so yeah, I think we just have to leave up the interaction and carry on trying to buy ourselves time. The Vamps are going wide on us anyway, so we'll have to try and make them go wide on us so that we can point removal over there. But it's probably the end for us, because we just refilled our opponent's hands. So Cabaretti Ascendancy, look at the top card at the beginning of the upkeep. If it's a creature or planeswalker, reveal it, put it into the hand. If you don't, put it on the bottom. Trace of Abundance goes onto a duel, just going to have it add additional mana. Turns out blowing up the commander has bought us a decent couple of turns here, seemingly. Tulane, always a scary one to see. And a Gold Forged Fopterix. A Flying Lifelinker, probably enough to get rid of us on its own. They did get into a land off the Tulane. Okay, so no attacks. The vampire player is about to start the turn. We'll assume that Faramir, maybe he points at the vampire player if he thinks that the Mardu deck is going to take us out. No, he thinks we're going to survive, so does decide to choose us. Profane Tutor with 7 cards in hand. What do you go after? Yeah, it's weird that that opponent used the spot removal on our Valgavoth. Like I said, this player would be sat at, how much commander damage was it? 9? So it might have made it easier for us to be able to tutor up like the Black Blade Reforged or something like that. I don't think we could have tutored it and played and equipped it in the same turn. Nowhere near, actually. But yeah, plays like that could have made the game a bit more relevant for us. Anyway, there's a Sol Ring over here. Has managed to get down a 5th land in Temple of the False God, which is lucky. Lucky that it was his 5th land and not his 4th. If he gets a vampire here, we're going to be forced to go after the Captivating Vampire. That is a Baron Bertram. So whenever 1 or more tokens you control enter, make a vampire token, and it only triggers once a turn. So before they get the token in, Let's go for Bitter Triumph, and we'll have to discard the Knight's Whisper to that. So this not only debuffs the army, making it less likely that they can go wide on us, but it will also keep them from stealing our commander. So that successfully goes down, meaning that we're not as likely to receive any attacks this turn. Draw a card to the Welcoming Vampire when the token enters. That will only trigger once a turn though. Still 7 cards in hand and plenty of mana. I think he's held on to the treasure all that time. I think those are the ones that we gave him. Alright, Immersed Predator. Wouldn't have thought it was a vampire, but a vampire dragon. When it becomes tapped, exile a card from a graveyard. Well, good luck with that. And it is a sack outlet to gain Indestructible as well. A Scribe with the Path of Ancestry. Edgar Markov will make them a token. They'll get an additional token thanks to the Baron. So hopefully we'll be able to make use of our mana here and go for Thrill of Possibility as opposed to Chaos Warp. Because we're in desperate need of drawing into something. Just not sure what it is here. Maybe a Decree of Pain would be decent. So no attacks. Thrill of Possibility. Discards a land and draw 2. Gets us into a useless, Animate Dead, and a Swamp. Okay, and a Talisman, so yeah, not having the best of luck here. I think we just have to go for Blasphemous Act then. The only problem is, Immersed Predator can gain Indestructible, so let's go Swamp. We'll have to Chaos Warp this first before we go for Blasphemous Act. So they do get into another vampire, that is a Cordial Vampire, that's fine. Draw another card. So they're back up to 7. And then we'll cast Insatiable Avarice for both modes here. So that is 3 black and 2. And so what we could do here is go for the Talisman of Indulgence and pay 1 off that for the Blasphemous Act. But of course it does mean taking more pain. So let's, where is it? Blasphemous Act can go on top. Could have ignored the Chaos Warp and gone for Damnation as well, but obviously they still had the Indestructible held up, so I had to go this way. Drew into another land and Psychosis Crawler. So the Rest in Peace being more relevant than we initially thought it was going to be. Animate Dead, the only means of us interacting with the graveyard. Are we going to take 3 out of the blue? Could always happen with the Vampire deck, having a hasty creature, but I think we're at a point in the game where every piece of mana is going to matter, so if we lose by 1 life, then so be it. We might as well land some commander damage while we can. So we'll turn into the right. Decides to take the damage. Then it can be a single red mana from the Talisman. Takes us down to 3, but we do get to cast a 1 mana Blasphemous Act. So we'll see if anyone can save themselves here. There is now from Bloomburrow, the white Heroic Intervention, where you have to gift a card. And that only costs 2 mana. There's Clever Concealment as well, which they could easily cast for free here, which is probably worth running in a vampire deck. He is holding up priority. So managing to wipe the board again, thankfully. We will put the commander back in the command zone, even if it went into the graveyard, it would get exiled. So absolutely no idea how we're going to wriggle out of this. Psychosis Crawler with a Shadow Spear attached to it might do a bit of something, but we're playing a reactionary game here when we want to be outracing our opponent down to 0 life. And obviously they are outracing us here. See if they get a card from the Cabaretti Ascendancy. Not revealing anything again, so this has been a dead card so far. Flowering of the White Tree is Ward and an Anthem effect. At least if we can get the enchantment into play. Mana Barbs? I don't think it is Mana Barbs. What is it called? Burning Earth. I decided on Burning Earth over Mana Barbs. That counts for non-basic lands, which is going to really hurt our opponents here. Would you look at that? A 3/4 haste. So we do get punished for taking the damage on the Talisman, but I think it was worth the risk, especially facing down all the vampires. Like I said, I'm not sure what we would have done ultimately to actually pull out from underneath this one. Oh, and it's actually a 5/5 anyway, thanks to the Flowering of the White Tree, so they had us either way, so can't feel too bad about it. So down we go to -2 finally. I'm glad that I got to show you a decent game, well, a decent showing of the actual deck in the first game. It wasn't a good game. This was a lot better, but I do want to actually show off the commander in the videos that I upload, which isn't always possible, but like I said, glad we got to do it here. Sylvan Library into play after that. We'll keep the hand full. We haven't managed to get our opponent's life total down that low. Noble Hierarch takes him down to 2. Vain Witch Coven is a means of returning creatures from graveyard to hand, which Again, the Rest in Peace doing some work this game. Will at the very least make a couple of vampires when it enters. 6 cards in hand for the vamp player still. Hasn't played his commander yet. So there we see it enter play for the first time. A 4-4 against a 1-2. And I think it puts plus counters on itself. Yeah, it's each vampire you control, so they don't even have to be attacking. Noteworthy that this one has Menace as well, so a 4-4 Menace, even when it can't do its thing from the graveyard, it's still going to be of use to our opponent, I think. Cabaretti Ascendancy, triggering again. We'll see if he goes 1 for 3. Nope. 0 for 3. I think it's 3 times. We've seen this. Done absolutely nothing. Sylvan Library. That triggers during the draw phase. This is during the upkeep, so he's not even able to stack his library to make that relevant. Suppose he can do it for next turn if he doesn't have any further card draw. I imagine the idea with this thing is that he plays blue cards with his commander and scries something decent onto the top, but I mean, that's just way too many hoops to jump through to make a bad card okay. Aragorn the Uniter in after that. We've got 4 cards in hand. I don't know what life total they were at before, so I'm not sure if they drew anything to the Sylvan Library. Got 16 life and 14 cards in hand now. The 5-5, Ward 1 and Haste swings in. So, have to assume that there's going to be a chump block here. Does get exalted, so jumps up to a 6-6. In response, we're seeing some interaction. Hopefully, he accounts for the ward. Alright, it's a thematic go for the throat in the vampire deck. Kind of have to run that, don't you? So, manages to blow up the Eowyn. Not sure what his aim is in keeping the token. I might have gone after his commander again there, personally. There's just way too much value to be had from this thing. Think I might have chumped this and blown up his commander. But manages to take out the Eowyn and throw it into exile. Maybe he's got some decent anthems he can throw into the vampires so that the token becomes more and more relevant. I mean, it gets at least 1 anthem from the Edgar Markov next turn. The commander is a 7-6, so the 2 commanders will trade if it decides to swing, which he probably does need to get aggressive. Alright, well, that explains it. Path to exile, onto the Aragorn, 2 mana to get rid of the commander, so in response to that he did just tap down some mana, so there might be some protection magic that he's holding up. There we go, Teferi's protection, so yeah, curious that he didn't try and protect his Eowyn with that then. Although I suppose it panned out alright, because Path to Exile could have gone in response to the protection. So makes a human soldier with the white spell, and then he has a path of his own, excellent, so throws that onto the Edgar Markov, makes another human soldier when he does that. Maybe he would have encouraged the Teferi's protection if he'd gone for go for the throat on this in the first place, but that's hindsight for you. The vamp player deciding to throw down a Necropolis Regent then, so at the very least is a decent flyer that he's able to block with. 2 mana floating, decides to shock down a Sacred Foundry, so down to 15, both players. And it's a Drana and Linvala, so another vampire, this one flying and vigilant, so getting some evasion going, which is going to be relevant, especially seeing as how we can get a hasty commander back into play. And plus counters on everything. The plus counters from the Necropolis Regent are only going to be relevant on the following turn most likely though, although this having vigilance being a big blocker could be useful. Anyway, another chance with the Cabaretti Ascendancy to be relevant. He did stack the top of his library with Sylvan Library previously, we think. I don't think he drew any cards. Still doesn't reveal anything though. So at 15 life we'll follow it with the library this time. Alright, 3 cards in hand and stays at 15. Ginny Fae, a means of replacing the tokens, so it'll be a 3-1 dog converted from a human, I have to imagine. Gives +4/+4 to a human token and 3 damage to the opponent as well. I'm sure he wants to be drawing into lots of red spells here. Oh, alright. He's got absolutely everything he needs here, so how many cards is that he can swing in with? 2, 4. He can only swing in with 4 creatures, but is he going to have trample on them? Yeah, he needs 6 creatures to have trample and 9 creatures to have double strike, which I don't think he'll quite have. But yeah, the trample could be relevant against the low toughness creatures. So it looks as though another buff was put onto the human tokens. These all have vigilance now as well, the first mode on Jetmir. Yeah, pretty unlucky for the vamp player that the 4-colour guy managed to get Jetmir right off the top. Emptying his hand into a Galadriel. So that is another +4/+4 onto a creature. So now we see a 14/10 with trample and vigilance. Oh, and it does have double strike, so he must have got up to the 9. What is that? 3, 6, 9. Just exactly enough. So what is that? I said 14, 10, 4, 2, and 9, 6, and another 9, 6. Double strike, trample, and vigilance on everything, so had exactly the right cards and took himself down to 0 cards in hand, but managed to pull out the victory. So, yeah, I was leaning towards the Vamp play, squeaking it out there, but that's why you play it out. You never know who's going to win. Got to see what our commander can do at least, even if it's in the non-first game. So if you want to see more from it, let me know. I have a feeling this is going to be a popular commander. Massive thank you to the patrons for their financial support of the channel as well. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.